Testing 1 2 3. Testing. Testing 1 2 3. Testing. 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 Hey, good morning. This is Rich Larson from Watermark Learning, and I want to welcome you to today's edition of the IIBA Certification Chat. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes. To familiarize yourself with the system for submitting questions, I'd like you to go to the GoToWebinar question panel and first locate it. Secondly, just try it out by sending in your name and your location or anything else like that, what's happening in your world. And that will get you used to the keyboard, whatever. And don't worry about spelling. Spelling doesn't count. The main thing is be able to send in your questions and to get familiar with that. So, good afternoon, Cornell from Toronto. Great. What's the weather like there, Cornell? You getting any snow? So I'm going to go mute for a minute or two, and I'll be back right before we start. Thanks. Hi, Christina from Iowa. Good morning again. This is Rich Larson from Watermark Learning. Cornell, sorry to hear about your snow today. I certainly know what that's like, being from Minnesota originally. We're going to get started in just a few seconds. And a couple of people have submitted something to me through the question panel. I want you all to get familiar with it. So for those of you that just joined us, please locate the question panel and let's see, stop recording. Welcome, welcome. This is Rich Larson from Watermark Learning, and it's the February 2020 edition of the IIBA Certification Chat. I want to welcome you to today's session, open to anything certification related from IIBA, and I've got a couple of polls to find out where you're at in terms of what your certification interest is, and take any kind of questions, so please familiarize yourself with the question panel that is in the GoToWebinar. Now, there's also a handout panel, and you can grab a copy of these slides right now, and we always send out links to slides and the recording at the end. So if you have to leave early, never fear. If we still keep going past the end of the half hour, we will make those questions and answers available to everyone. So great. So as we get started here, these slides are not to be something I talk to you from. They're a collection of disparate things about certification. Reminders of our next session and classes from Watermark Learning on CBAP and CCBA training, as well as video on demand. There's info here about requirements of the basic certifications from IIBA, exam blueprint for those 3 levels. What else is here? A couple of tips for submitting your application, and I'll be asking you where you're at in your certification process very shortly. There's a page full of certification resources and links that you could click to go get more information. Some top prep tips that we've accumulated over the years to share with you. Stuff if you have to retake your exam, and a couple of things about the IIBA-AAC certification, Agile Analysis, and their newest certification of Business Data Analytics. We give people a little incentive for saying thank you for attending, and then that's about it. So I'm ready for the first question whenever you are. Right now in January, IIBA was cutting over to a new proctored type of system. So I'm curious, is it, well, nobody is taking the exam, I assume, although people have attended these chats after they've passed their certification for sure. So maybe the best thing for me to do first is launch the poll to find out which certifications or certificates are you interested in. So I'm going to launch this poll and ask you to fill out one of them. And if none of these apply, maybe shoot me in a note through the question panel about which certification you're interested in. So, all right, so please indicate your interest level. Which are you going for? So far, about 2/3 of you have voted. So hopefully everybody has voted that wants to vote. So I'm going to close that poll, share the results. And most of you are interested in CBAP, which is pretty typical. It's not the only one, of course, but primarily CBAP. And the second poll, let me pull that open. Come on, there you go. The second poll, which is stubbornly, I'm going to hide that first one. I'm going to open the second one now. How far along are you? That is another question. Are you just looking into it? Are you deep into studying, whatever, exam is coming up soon? Or where are you at in your certification journey, essentially, is what I'm asking. Helps give me a sense of what your interest level is. So, okay. Pretty evenly split between just looking into it, those of you who got applications done, and studying hard for your exam now, it looks like. So I'm going to close that poll, share it with you. Let's see. Excuse me. All right, pretty evenly split across the board. So, but like I said, anything is fair to ask about certification. So, what would you like to know? You know, what's on your mind? For those of you just looking into it, are you having any problem with the application for CBAP or anything like that? Those of you that are studying, what are your struggles? Do you have specific questions? Are you using our online study exam? Those are typical questions that people have. Passing rate, retaking, anything of that sort. So I'm waiting for your questions. I assume you can all hear me. Can everybody hear me okay? Is the audio on this microphone I'm using working okay? Oh, good. Christina, hey, thank you. Good, thanks for the feedback about hearing me. She says, I've read through the book a couple of times. Are you talking about our book or the BABA or both? Are there specific practice tests to take at this point? The BABA. I always suggest, and let me just zoom ahead in your notes here to our prep tips. With number 2, you basically have read the BABA. So number 3, one chapter at a time, do practice questions on that knowledge area or the chapter. I mean, it could be the more introductory chapters or the techniques or underlying competency, whatever. To do some practice tests on that. Watermark has designed its top online study exam to allow you to do drills. You can do them in any order, and you certainly don't have to practice one chapter at a time in order. I would recommend tackling the hardest knowledge area for you first. After you've read the BABAC, you'll know what that is. So focus on that. Do practice exam questions, but not too many. I mean, you could do thousands and thousands of practice questions, and frankly, exam banks such as ours don't have an infinite number of questions on a knowledge area. So move on to another one. So maybe do 2 or 3 drills on a knowledge area and move on to the next one. Dolapo is asking, with your experience, what would you suggest is the best form of studying for the CBAP exam, especially using the Watermark to practice? Well, kind of what I was suggesting, and these tips are, these tips are sort of tips, can't talk today, are the suggested way to tackle pretty much. So read the BABAC and our study guide, and then focus one chapter at a time, do those drill questions. If you take a drill and it's less than 80%, then do another one. But again, stop after 2 or 3 and then go on to each new section, step 5 here. Once you're done with all the BABAC chapters, then move on to doing simulations. These are timed exams, much like the real thing, with the exact same number of questions and essentially the same percentages as the exam blueprint that is in your notes here and is in the IIBA handbook for that exam. Now, take a simulation, see how you're doing in step 7. If you get any scores in any specific knowledge areas on your simulations, then go back and repeat step 3, where you go back and reread at least the portions of the chapter that you're having trouble with. I think our online study exam is really good in terms of giving you specific BABAC reference numbers to go zero in on your study so that you don't have to necessarily waste time rereading things you already know well. So that's kind of a suggested approach and kind of in a nutshell, Delapo. Hopefully that helps. Cornell says, I just started studying. I'm reading the Watermark Learning book for the first time. Yay, thanks for purchasing it. How many times do you suggest I cover the book before the exam? Well, a lot depends. If you go through the 7 steps and you're hitting close to 80% on all the knowledge areas, you can stop. In other words, that's why I don't give it a specific number of times. Sometimes it'll take 2 or 3 times of reading the book. Seriously, on average, as you can see in tip number 1, our research has shown people take about 100 hours on average for the CBAP exam for those who are successful. So it could be a couple, 3 times, or it could be a lot of exam questions. Different people have different study preferences and ways of absorbing information. So for me, visual. So I tend to do well by reading and also a little tactile. So I like to take notes, and that helps me absorb information. And doing the practicing is maybe to come later. So just as one example. So hopefully that, Cornell, that answers your questions. Focus in on how are you doing on the simulations in our online exam is good about giving you a score, and a cumulative score at that. So you can see that, well, on strategy analysis, I'm still lagging at about 50%, whereas on elicitation, I'm hitting it out of the park at 95%. I can really stop that knowledge area. Does that make sense? Delapo said, just answer this question. Judith says, how does the new exam taking work? I would like to know too. I'm waiting to hear reports from the field. So if you folks can please let us know, either by email, sending it into info@watermarklearning.com. Just as anecdotes, the proctoring has worked very well on exams like the IIBA-AAC. So we've had experience with those kind of exams being proctored. And I don't know if it was IIBA's intent, but they certainly use those as prototypes to see how those are going. And it's a different way of taking tests, for sure. And to some extent, I prefer the old-fashioned way, but then, you know, that's me. With the new proctored approach, you have to clear your desk. You have to show the proctor through a camera attached to your laptop that you've got no notes, which I understand, but you can't also look off into space and think about a question, because theoretically, you could have something pasted on your wall, or somebody's going to theoretically give you the answer. And so it's very stilted, and you can't move around much. The proctor will notice. They watch you like a hawk. And so therefore you have to really focus. So what I would suggest is during your final simulations, using our exam, do at least 1 or 2 realistic speed tests, and also tests of just focusing in on the computer to get used to the real thing, so that you're not kind of like feeling really all constrained when you get into the real exam. So Judith, did that answer your question? Monbeers asks, I want to do the AAC. How do I go about it? How should I start? Well, we have an online study exam, and we also have a class. We don't have a study guide because the materials aren't nearly as complicated for that as they are for the CBAP. So I would suggest getting the Agile guide from IIBA and reading through that thoroughly, and then do much the same thing. So step 2 would be reading their Agile guide, and then go and study it maybe a chapter at a time, and do drills using our online exam, and go so forth. The reason I bring up the class too is that, again, based on certain learning styles, a class can really help you focus and get you zeroed in on the right things you need. And sometimes for people like me that have trouble focusing, a class can be a really great way to do it. If you are able to study on your own, a lot of people don't need the class and are able to do independent study, and that's fine. So that's a quick bit of advice, Manbir, about what you would do. So any study materials to cover my CDUs? Absolutely, yes. So like for that AAC in particular, we have some video on demand as well as live training for Agile analysis and Agile AAC preparation. So that would help you for sure. Christina asked, I haven't taken other tests, but I believe I have work experience that qualifies for CBAP. How detailed should I list the experience so I can qualify from the work experience perspective? The good news is you don't have to be super detailed. You have to associate the work you did with certain knowledge areas, meaning you have to understand what the knowledge areas are. So I always advise to at least scan the first chapter or 2 in the BABAC before you tackle the application, so you understand those knowledge areas. There's no way that IIBA can really drill into too much detail, and it's really an honor system. So if you say that I did, let's say your job was like in the past, mine was a programmer analyst. I spent part of my time programming, part of my time doing analysis. So on a given project, maybe half my time was spent, interviewing people or documenting requirements or validating requirements, whatever the case. You would end up putting 50% or close to it on your application. So that's what you do. You specify how much time you spent, knowledge area by knowledge area, on a given project. And IIBA can audit your application by contacting your references and your contacts. And that's all they can do, though. And I'm not suggesting that's the way to cheat, but the fact is they don't have a way to verify other than that. And so they ask you to sign a code of conduct as well, so that you're testifying that all that stuff is true. And so hopefully that gives you the perspective you need, Christina. Balaji says, is the format and style of the Watermark question similar to what you will experience in the real exam? Mostly yes, and a little bit no. Let me explain that. The yes part is, yeah, we carefully constructed questions based on our past experience with exams and any feedback about tone and tenor. Nobody gives us exact content. We don't want to know because it's not ethical to know what's actually on the exam. But as far as the tone and tenor, people tell us, yeah, you have similar in that nature. Plus, we're very familiar with the BABAC and can construct our practice questions to match the kind of things you're going to be asked. Now, the no part, the part that our questions you might find are not similar, are some of the knowledge-based questions. And because our exam is an online study exam, and it's not meant to be just a pure simulator, we have questions that are designed to help you learn the BABAC. And the reason we do that is so that you really absorb the material and you know the BABUC so that you can apply your knowledge to what's in the BABUC to answer the questions. So we find that the right combination of things. So hopefully that answers your question. Cornell says, where can I purchase simulations with questions? Go to our website, watermarklearning.com. And I believe if I back up here in the links, there is information on the website. You can see here, watermarklearning.com/CBAP would be a good place to start, Cornell and everyone else. Christina says, can you still go to a testing site or do you have to do it online? You have to do it online from what I understand. I don't think there are exceptions. I would ask IIBA, and as long as you're here, the phone number that you should really pay attention to is right here, certification@iiba.org. If you have questions about that kind of thing, ask them. The reason I don't want to be sounding definitive on that note is that they're trying this out and they may find, I don't know, exceptions that would mean they would allow you to go to a testing center, but I don't really know that. From what I understand, all the exams are being proctored, so do check with them if you're really concerned about that, but otherwise assume it's a proctored. Obalaji says, also, is the drill questions easier than the simulation practice questions? To some extent. The drill questions, again, are designed with study and knowledge in mind. The simulation on CBAP will have many more simulations and will be the place you would find the so-called case study questions. Are you familiar with the case study questions, folks? Those are part of CBAP. They're lengthy. IBA says a page to a page and a half of information. I equate that to 400 to 700 words, so pretty lengthy. Could contain graphics, and then you answer 3 to 5 questions based on that case, and those are way more complicated. So yes, they're designed to try to test your knowledge of being able to apply your knowledge as opposed to just answering response kind of questions, knowledge-based recall questions. So Mandir says, how much time do I need to spend studying? And I can remember, Mandir, are you talking about the AAC or the CBAP? Because I think it might be a little bit different. If you're interested in the CBAP, as I suggested earlier, plan on spending around 100 hours, which if you take a class includes that time. But if you're studying, say, for the AAC, perhaps half of that amount of time, maybe less. Just a guess. Depends on how much knowledge you have and how much more you need to study. So Cornell, I think I answered your question too about can you take the exams the old way. Purnima, hope you don't mind me pronouncing your name that way. Are simulations same as Watermark online tests? I'm not quite sure the way you're asking the question, but our online tests include 3 different things. I didn't mention warm-ups before, but let me go back to them. Those are very simple simulations in which you'll get some mostly easy questions just to kind of get you used to taking an exam. Secondly, we have the drills, as I mentioned, to let you practice knowledge area by knowledge area. Third, we have simulations. And those are the exact number of questions, the knowledge areas percentage-wise by the blueprint, and then they contain simulations and scenarios, I meant to say, and case studies. The drill questions are a part of that online study exam. So if you subscribe to the online study exam, then you'll get those bar shot. So they're embedded in that. They include all 3 of those. And from what I know, we're unique in providing those levels of questions that you can do. Judith says, still wondering, you mentioned proctors and camera. What does check your space mean? Okay, space means your desk in your area of surroundings. So you'll have to hold up your camera to show the proctor. And you can't see me right now, but I'm moving my laptop around to show that your space doesn't have any notes, because you can't take the exam if there's any, a stack of paper next to you, because that could be your cheat sheets, and they of course want to prevent that, as you would understand. So checking your space means clearing your desk and the surrounding area of anything that might be construed as notes, books, cheat sheets, anything that would be helping you pass the exam in not a good way. Cornell says, taking at test centers instead of online proctor stuff. Right. The test centers, as I mentioned, you may not be, I don't think you'll be able to do it. So Cornell says, I'm about to schedule my exam date and it provides both options. That's interesting because my understanding, last thing I'd read from them was that they were going to stop that in January. So that's kind of what I mentioned, that IIBA, as they're trying these things out, will make changes without necessarily letting us know. I'm trying to be polite about that. So good, if they give you the option, that's great. And I, again, suggest if you have any doubts to contact IIBA about that. Cool. Oluwafunke, hope that's your pronunciation. What's the pass mark for the CBAP exam? They don't release that. I would say it's in the 80% range will pass the exam the first time, but IIBA will not release that. They don't let us know. And but speaking of pass rates, 70% is considered the cut score that you have to get in order to pass. That's what people are guessing. Jen says, for AAC, how comprehensive, matching the real test, are the Watermark practice tests? We think they're pretty comprehensive. Again, we constructed them based on our knowledge of Agile, number one, and the Agile practice guide, number two, so that we matched up the different domains in our online exam against what IIBA has said. And at what score are you ready for the exam? Again, I think 80% roughly is the goal. I don't strive for 100% because that means you're spending way too much time on our practice questions and you start memorizing them, and that doesn't help. But if you're at the 50% level, you may not be ready either. It's not perfect because people have told me, hey, Rich, I got 80% on my practice exams and I still failed. So it's no guarantee, but it's a good guideline that you're ready. And what I'm saying is that further practice exams won't necessarily help you. You may need to absorb other parts of the BABAC in order to really absorb the information. So whether it's a study group you belong to, use flashcards, write your own practice questions, those are all techniques, take a class, whatever. Okay, so Monbeer says, AAC only CBAP, I cleared already. Okay, got it. So that was my question earlier. Thanks to Watermark, whoops, I lost the question. Thanks to Watermark, I did practice the questions. Great, glad to hear you got the CBAP. So yeah, again, I think you were asking about the number of hours. I think it's around 50, maybe, as a goal. Jen says, I feel like I know the material quite well and can hold rich conversations with interviewers and colleagues, but I can't afford a retest fee, so I feel unsure about being ready. I totally understand. There's a kind of a sweet spot for your study. Now, let me tell you a quick little story. When I passed my PMP, I kept studying and studying, and I felt unsure too. So I kept studying and taking practice exams. I kept postponing and delaying, and it took about 2 years finally to end up passing. And I don't know where I would have stopped, but I wasn't using a simulator. Watermark didn't have one at the time, and that would have helped because I just took them out of a book that I'd bought from some vendor. Anyway, so having the numerical score can help you, but again, it's no guarantor. So no magic answer for you. But Jen, I'm just curious, are you using our online study exam? That'd be my first question. Akara says, does the Watermark Learning questions simulate exactly what the CBAP exam gives? Again, they do not. Any vendor that tells you that they exactly simulate what the real exam does is suspect. Ours give you very similar questions. We go into the BABAC, we pull out what we think is important or what would be good test nuggets for you to be tested on, but they're our best guess. And we're given the exam blueprint, so we know the percentages of questions, we know the kind of questions to ask, the Bloom's taxonomy, in order to be able to construct our own questions. And we've gotten quite good at it after having spent many years doing this. 2007 was when we started beginning doing certification on the CBAP. So I think we've gotten it down. So we've helped many people pass their exam. Literally thousands of people have taken our online exam and have passed. So I don't know what more to say. There's no guarantee, but boy, we're really confident of what we do. So Jen, I'm saying, Jen said, I am subscribed to the Watermark, but usually I do drills and practice. Rather than the full exam. Okay. Well, if you're getting close to 80% on your drills, it's time to move on to the simulations and see how you're doing there. And I really strongly suggest that you do a simulation in one sitting. Now, the real exam, you have what, 3.5 hours or something. So see how long it takes you to get through 120 questions at one sitting. Okay, and that'll tell you a lot. Douglas says the application process was so daunting that I went ahead and did the PMP certification instead. Well, I understand, Douglas. I went through PMP first. What is the reason for this gauntlet of hoops to jump through? All I can say, Douglas, is way better now than it was in version 2 and earlier. That may not help you much, but the application has been streamlined, and I can't answer that. I think other than IIBA is run by analysts, maybe, and they want to really be thorough. They don't want to have a reputation of having a paper-based certification. I think that's the real driver. They want to have it be more meaningful and have applicants be genuinely demonstrated your experience with it versus you could theoretically make up some numbers in the PMP exam. I'm not saying you did or anybody does, but they probably do. And then go ahead and take the PMP exam after you take an exam cram course, of which there are many. And that doesn't serve the industry well. So not taking anything away from PMI, because I certainly had experience and I studied a heck of a lot, as I mentioned. But I would take a look for, Douglas, when did you go through the application process? When was that? It says, I successfully scheduled my exams for Saturday, May 16th at a test center. Yay! Good for you. All right, good. Well, let us know how you do, okay? 2013-ish, Douglas says. I wonder if that was the new, that's, I think, old enough to be the old one. So give it another try, and the application's easier. In fact, we have, by the way, on our website, if you go to, let's see, what's the best place to send you to for our application worksheet. Over here in the links that I was mentioning over here, can you see where I'm highlighting? There are a number of free resources to help you, including an application worksheet. That application worksheet, actually, that's not quite, well, I think it's there. If you can't find it there, certainly just send an email to info@watermarklearning.com. And it helps you immensely to organize your work and to allow you to transfer the information easily from the spreadsheet over to the IIBA online application. So I think you might find it easier if you did really do the thing. Okay, Akara says, how often does the Watermark exam banks get updated? We update majorly when there's a new release. IIBA doesn't change their exam until there's a new release. In other words, they don't update questions until they need to. So it's been pretty steady. We will do occasional new questions if we hear feedback about our exam. Again, not the content, but hey, you're missing any questions on interviewing, which would be kind of ludicrous, but, and then we might just go add some questions on that topic. And that's not violating our code of conduct. But except for some of those occasional things, we don't have to update the question bank because the IIBA, the way IIBA runs their exams. Now, for other exams that periodically do updates, that PMP changes every once in a while. We will do updates when a vendor like PMI will announce they've got new questions. So we do update them as often as we need to. We hit the bottom of the half hour. I'm still happy to keep going. If you have to leave for whatever reason, remember the recording will be provided with any questions from beginning to end. So never fear, you won't miss out. Adeze says, how many of the simulation questions do I need to attempt to be ready for the CBAP? I also take drills a lot and have not attempted the exam question. I would say to take maybe at least 3 to 4 drills. That way you'll hit all of our case studies. About that number. I think after that many, I think you will have done enough to know whether you're ready to take the exam. Okay, Christina, we'll do Christina. I just applied for the CBAP and it was really easy. Great, great to hear. There were just fields to fill out, very self-explanatory. That's why I'm thinking that the newer method is much easier. And in fact, we simplified our exam worksheet immensely for version 3 when it came out because their application process was simplified. So glad to hear that, Christina. That's super duper. And I'm glad that you were user spreadsheet. Thanks for the feedback that it worked well. Appreciate that. Jen says, so the full exam simulation is not just more questions, but different types of questions. Yes, it is. We purposely put the case studies only into the simulation so that you don't get too used to them. Because we want to encourage people to do the drills to really absorb the knowledge. And then we loaded up the simulation with more scenarios. There are some scenarios in the drills, but you'll encounter more of them in the full simulation, as well as the case studies. That's the only place you'll find the case studies. So make sure you do, like I said, at least 3 to 4 of those to get enough practice on the case studies. Okay, I'm going to pause for just a second. Again, if you have any last lingering questions, I'm here to answer them. If you have to go, that's cool. If you have to head up, bye, Christina. Best wishes on getting your certification. Thanks for participating. Thank you, Jen. Again, best wishes, everyone, on passing. Any last questions here that are on your mind? Yes, Douglas, go for it. Do it before they change it. I'm glad you heard that it was easier based on another person's comments. Yeah, go for it. Yes, super duper. Anybody else have questions? I might say last call. Well, I'm going to wrap up then. If you don't have any more questions, I'm going to say goodbye and best wishes on passing your exam. I don't say good luck because I'm superstitious. Maybe I'll say break a leg or something like they do in the theater.